Alright, I thought I would briefly share my perspectives on last night's Metamoris 5. I didn't watch the entire competition. I watched 3 of the bouts that I was most interested in. That's an hour's worth of jiu-jitsu, which was plenty enough for me. The one that I was most interested in, that I think a lot of people were excited about, was the Kazushi Sakuraba versus Renzo Gracie match. I'm of course familiar with the fights that Sakuraba has had where he's successfully beaten several of the Gracies in the past, and so I was excited to see what would happen here, whether Renzo would be able to kind of like save the family's honor and turn it around, or what exactly would occur. So going in, it was nice to see Sakuraba. He looked more fit than I imagined he would, although he was pretty, I'd heard rumors about his lifestyle and physical ailments and stuff like that he had since his fighting days. So I didn't really know what to expect of him, but he did look very physically fit. The only thing was he had a lot of joint taping. He's obviously had a lot of wear and tear on all of his joints of his hands and his legs. I think both of his knees had tensor braces on them. He had maybe a couple of his toes taped up, most of his fingers and wrists and all of that taped up. So he looked like he had a lot of joint problems and such. All the same, it didn't seem to impede him in terms of the match against Renzo. This was, I kind of expected to see something really exciting, because it's been so long since there was a Sakuraba Gracie fight, but or any match of any contest of any kind. But it really wasn't like that. This was two older guys, well, probably my age or maybe a couple of years older than me even, and they were being very careful. Not careful in terms of concern about hurting the other, their opponent, but careful in terms of respecting the abilities of their opponent. And so they took things, I thought, very strategically, carefully. The first 5 minutes of the bout was just some stand-up grappling, and mostly just attempts at getting good positioning or getting some arm control where they might be able to affect the takedown. Eventually the takedowns did begin, and you end up seeing, like, for the next 5 minutes, Renzo is on his back and Sakuraba's in his guard, and I couldn't really tell what the strategy of either was in that position. The moderators or the announcers to the match seemed to think that Renzo was getting himself set up for an armbar of some kind. He did have one of Sakuraba's right arm kind of pinned to his own chest. I mean, to Renzo's chest. He had Sakuraba's arm pinned to his chest, with this arm kind of holding it down, and then he was kind of working this arm to try to gain control of Sakuraba's left hand. So there was a lot of attempts at wrist control on that side. It wasn't really going anywhere, and then eventually there was I can't quite remember, I think it might have been a Kimura attempt or guillotine attempt or something to this sort, that ended up flipping things over so that Sakuraba was on his back, and Gracie did a kind of used like this double leg stack to pass Sakuraba's guard, got inside guard and was trying a few different things. He was eventually kind of turned into a north and south position on top of Sakuraba, and it looked like he was going, like from what the announcers were saying, I didn't see it coming, but well, there was one point eventually when he did, but at first, you know, they started speculating about an attempted Kimura that might be ironic because this is how Henzo lost to Sakuraba in a prior fight like 14 years ago. He got his arm broken in this north and south type of Kimura. He did eventually start to, you know, look like more than speculation because he was kind of trapping Sakuraba's head with his legs and preparing for that submission. It never worked out for him. Sakuraba was really good at escaping everything. And then toward the end of the fight, it was just Henzo was just on top of Sakuraba in Sakuraba's half guard, and Henzo was kind of just trying to, it looked like he was just using his hips to kind of keep Sakuraba down. At the same time, Sakuraba was trying some kind of a leg lock on him. Nothing especially effective, and this is where the 20 minutes ended and the match ended in a draw. So it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of slow, but at the same time, these two were really experienced guys, and it was neat to see them calculating and being careful in terms of respecting one another's abilities, so that they didn't give away anything, and they were using a lot of, you know, energy control and this kind of a thing. It was nice. It was a nice match to see. You know, of course, you'd hope that it would end in some kind of you know, clear victory for one or the other. But I would say that well, of course, just by the rules of Metamoris, nobody wins. It was a draw. So another fight that I watched, or another match that I watched, was the JT Torres versus Rory McDonald. And this was, you know, younger guys and a little bit more exciting. And of course, Rory McDonald is a UFC guy, and so you know, he brought a little more to it. Not to take anything away from Torres. Torres was very exciting as well. Basically, there was at the beginning of the fight, there was the takedown started happening very quickly. There was a lot of scrambling on the ground to try to get you know, superior positions on one another. Both contestants tried, you know, went for a lot of submissions. I guess people were surprised that Rory McDonald went for as many as he did. He was trying some very dynamic submission attempts. In fact, you know, there was a couple of times during the match when he tried kind of a flying scissors technique that a lot of guys wouldn't use. In fact, it's not even allowed in a lot of contests because it's a dangerous technique. But in any case, yeah. Both of them were going for submissions. Both of them were escaping very well. They kept going. You know, Rory kept bringing it back up on his feet. He wanted to be on his feet and try to get a takedown and get a superior position. And Torres would prevent it. A lot of times, what he would do is after, you know, they first started with real like takedown attempts, like you know, leg picks and stuff, but eventually Torres was just like pulling his guard, and you know, even just laying back on the ground and waiting for Rory to try to pass around and get something on him. There was a point where Torres, toward the end of the fight, maybe about 7 or 8 minutes to the end, he got what looked like it was going to be a really strong Kimura. It was the kind of thing what Renzo Gracie had been going for against Sakuraba in the main event himself, but he didn't get it nearly as good as Torres did against McDonald, and it was really just McDonald like muscling his way out of it, just pure strength, pulling his arm out of the Kimura that got his escape. He was, a little bit bigger than Torres, not too much, but I think maybe it was 20 pounds or something, and a little bit taller, and just physical stature, you could see he was bigger, but he was able to muscle his way out of that. The end of the fight, maybe in the last 2 minutes or so, they both had like mutual heel hooks they were attempting, and then mutual escapes, and the match ended in a draw. Again, it would have been nice to see it finish with somebody being victorious, but it was a draw. And then I did watch a third match, which was the secret match, which was Roberto Satoshi versus Jake Shields, and that was another really fast-paced match, and it was just a lot of scrambling all the way along, with both guys attempting all kinds of different submissions, and Satoshi especially went for some strange things. He was trying. It looked like he was trying to use techniques that you might use with a gi to affect different kind of chokes and stuff, and maybe some arm chokes and these kind of things. But it wasn't working. Jake Shields, by the time maybe a third of the way or a quarter of the way into the fight, Jake Shields was getting pretty sweaty. He wasn't wearing a shirt. Satoshi was wearing a rash guard, and so I think it kind of put him in a position where Shields was able to control things a little bit better than he would have if both of them were bare-chested. But really, it was all around, it was kind of a sweat fest, and I think because it was so sweaty, I think this is why we didn't end up seeing somebody actually succeed at getting a submission with all the scrambling they were doing. Anyway, that contest also ended in a draw, and so the three matches that I did watch, all of them ended in draws, and it makes me wonder whether or not they're going to, at some point, maybe reconsider the rules for these Metamoris bouts, because I don't know. I think it would be nice to keep it going a little longer. See if you could get somebody to have a win, or maybe after 20 minutes in, there could be some way to handicap the competitors and give them, throw some challenges at them, make them both disadvantaged in some way, to carry on until there is a clear win. Because even in the past Metamorises, I watched the Bravo versus Gracie. I think that was Metamoris 3, and that one was a draw as well. You see a lot of draws coming out of the Metamoris competitions, and it's fun to see the jiu-jitsu, but if a guy knows that all he has to do is hold a position for a couple of minutes longer, and it's going to bring him that much closer to the end of the fight and the end of the match and a draw. I don't know if they would do something different, like say the end of the Renzo Gracie versus Sakuraba match, would the two of them have approached it any differently if there was no such thing as a draw? If there's, I'm not saying do like a points win. It should be a submission win, I think. But would they have approached it a little bit more aggressively if they knew they weren't just going to be able to hang in there at the end and wait out the last few minutes, with Kenzo kind of holding Sakuraba down and Sakuraba trying to do what he could do with his legs to affect a leg lock or something. Maybe it would have been a little bit more exciting all around if you had to win by submission. I mean, there had to be a submission one way or another. No draws. So I don't know. Some of my thoughts on watching it. I don't think that at this point yet, Metamoris will ever be like the UFC, because I think the jiu-jitsu is just, it's so specialized in everything. But I do think it's a good contest to have, especially for guys that, I've said this before, who are kind of over the hill for the UFC, or the UFC is too dangerous for them at this point because of extensive trauma that they've already endured. And so then I think Metamoris, is a nice option to go into where fans can continue to enjoy, these martial artists in their competitions. But I think there could be some changes made to the rules of the Metamoris that would perhaps make it more popular. And I think myself, I don't know about everybody else, but I want to see some closure to some of these things. It'd be nice to see a clear victor rather than a victor by points or just a draw with nobody as a winner. I don't know. Just it adds to the whole drama of the sport. If you have some kind of victor, so that you can have perhaps a follow-up fight, these kind of things, or a follow-up match. I don't know. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I don't know if they make any sense or if I was just kind of meandering on tangents, but that's what was on my mind about Metamoris 5, and I thought I'd get it out there while people are still talking about it.